Chief Pilgrim, and after we start recording, I'm going to ask you to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you be willing to do that?
Absolutely, of course.
Mayor, we are recording.
All right. I want to again welcome everyone. It's just after 7. It's the City of Cottonwood Heights. It's our business meeting, Tuesday, June 2nd, 2020. And so again, welcome. We've asked Chief Riley Pilgrim to lead us in a Pledge of Allegiance.
Hey, Mayor.
Yes.
Could we dedicate this to our brown and black community members that are hurting so much right now?
Absolutely. I think we can, it's a time to recognize those efforts as well as the efforts of our police officers who are putting in difficult situations. So it's a lot of pain and a lot of concern, especially with those minorities and their challenges and what they're feeling, and for our public servants who are also heavily involved. So that'd be great.
Thanks, Mayor.
Riley?
Yeah, everyone please stand. Repeat the Pledge of Allegiance with me. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the
of the
United
United
States,
States of America and to the
To the
republic
republic for which it stands,
one
nation
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's always kind of a strange way to do it, but appreciate one of our first responders doing that for us. Tim, do we have any citizen comments that we want to read into the record?
Yes, I have 3 citizen comments, and I will just read each one of those as they've been submitted to us. The first one is from Eric Cron.
Wait a minute, is this part of the public hearing or citizen comments?
It's citizen comments.
Okay. Yeah.
It's citizen comments. All 3 of these they're not delineated as part of the budget hearing, and they look like they're citizen comments to me. So first one is Eric Cron. He says, "Dear City Council, does this budget make our city more resilient? If so, how? Item 4.3, our city will be contractually obligated to pay for the maintenance of parking garages, subsidized parking at taxpayer expense. Please justify how building any more parking lots at a time when we are cutting services or increasing taxes to our residents makes our city more resilient. Second bullet point, proper budgeting should take into account future long-term liabilities for any existing and newly acquired assets and make fiscal arrangements to see for their maintenance and eventual replacement. I'm troubled to read that the only asset the city is making a conscious effort to appropriate funds for future maintenance is City Hall. For most, if not all, other city assets, we are seemingly flying blind, relying on credit, being heavily dependent on state or county funds to bail out the city's obligations, or increasing taxes. Third bullet point, at a time of civil unrest around our nation due to police brutality, it is worrisome to learn that our chief of police is suing the city and an elected official. Line item 4.4, today's agenda. I strongly suggest that this council consider a citizen committee to oversee the department and to make recommendations once a year before the council's budget retreat for the council to incorporate the recommendations through the budgeting process to allow members of the public not in said committee the opportunity to weigh in. This is a proactive step intended to improve policing, improve public relations, and hopefully reduce further conflict or litigation, which in the end always ends up costing the taxpayers more money, or in budgetary terms it would improve our city's resiliency. Thank you, Eric Cron." That's the first one. The second one is from Mr. Joseph E. Bycroft at 8364 South Top of the World Drive. He says, sorry, this is kind of small writing. "The way to change starts with those charged with enforcing the laws. They're the ones who need to call out those who abuse their powers. They're the ones who need to stand up and say you did wrong and need to pay the price. They need to be the ones who cooperate with the DAs investigating police shootings. They need to call out bad behavior. When they do that, then they are truly standing up for true law and order. Otherwise, they are no better than the criminals they are chasing. This applies to all city officials in doing their jobs as well. As city council, you're charged with making sure the budgets are fair for both the taxpayer and the department that needs the funds. And then the third is full name, the man, Tim Howbeck, 2251 Cottonwood Cove Lane. He says just a couple of things for item 2020-26, the slurry project are the maps and schedules to go along with the proposal. It would be handy to anticipate that areas to avoid on the scheduled slurry days. Also on the lighter side, it's good to see a number of our bars and restaurants opening again. I bet Tally would agree it's about time. And then he says, pause for groans. Thanks everyone for staying open and keeping the city running. Those are the only 3 comments I have at this time. Mayor, you're on. Oh, you're on mute.
Oh, somebody unmuted me and muted me. I didn't do it myself. Anyway, I just think it's appropriate with the pledge and recognizing the challenges and the concerns of those in our country who are of black or brown or whatever color you want to refer to them as minorities. But also, I think it's important as we take these public comments that are sometimes critical. I've received several letters as mayor that are not part of public comment that I respond to, but many of those letters have been in support of our city's efforts, of our police department, of public safety, and wanting to ensure that we protect them, and as well as we've had those who want to be assured that we have appropriate training for our officers and so on. So there's a lot of concern out there, and I applaud our police department for their sensitivity. I got a personal call from the mayor of Salt Lake City, who personally met with some of our officers the day after the situation last Sunday night, and she was, quote unquote, very impressed with the professionalism. So I think it's only important that we try and be sensitive to both sides, that we provide the training for our officers, we recognize their efforts, at the same time we recognize the concerns that those who are marching and have the right to march when it's done in the right way. So any comments?
Mary, I would echo your gratitude. We have some amazing officers out there, and the work they're doing to assist with the downtown situation, it's been inspiring. And I don't think we have 2 sides here. I think we have the American side, and together, as we listen to each other, we will move forward.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Any other
Bobby?
comments? Doug?
I have a question. How are the officers doing? I guess 3 of our injured officers were injured, and I know that some had stitches and different things. Are they doing okay? Appreciate their work.
Robbie?
Yes, thanks for asking. They're doing fine. 2 were injured from rocks and bottles. The third one, they threw lit fireworks, those mortars, into the crowd. Then they discharged a heavy a baseball size mortar hard pellet into the side of one of the officers and burned and bruised him. But they're all fine. They're all back to work, and we've been networking with all the other agencies, and we've gotten several calls from citizens and Black Lives Matter, and we're pleased to support their right to protest, and we're happy to support Salt Lake City, and we're very pleased to bring those to justice who violate the law and hurt other people or try to burn our city.
Thanks for that work. That's important to us.
If it's okay, Mayor, I would just say I appreciate one of the nice things
as I've had a historical perspective, is when we've had an officer or someone else, even in the city, that's ever had anything at question, it's always been brought up. There's been good discipline and training added. And unfortunately, a couple we've had to let go because they weren't quite up to the standard that we demand here in Cottonwood Heights. And so I appreciate the leadership in the department and from the city manager's office on those cases throughout the last 11 years that we've had our own police force. Well, may I just say thank you for that, because training is important, but you can't train foolishness or bad judgment out of a police officer. So we count on the city officials, elected officials, and other city leaders to support us and help us find good candidates, retain good candidates, and keep the good quality officers. And those who don't meet our expectations, we have not been shy in sending them down the road. Although we get some criticism for that, we won't have it any other way.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for those comments. These are challenging times, and if we just work together as a council and as administration and as staff, hopefully we can have successful outcomes. But anyway, our appreciation for all of our staff for all that they do. I mean, it's been very impressive tonight to hear from our fire department functioning this evening, what our police department is dealing with, the planning department with respect to open space, and then roads, finance. We're very lucky in our city to have competent, qualified individuals. So again, thank you. Next item on our business meeting agenda is item 3.0, is a public hearing to take comment on the tentative budget for the period of 1 July 2020 to June 30th, 2021. Again, this is a tentative budget, and based upon comments and thoughts and ideas, we have the right to modify before it's adopted on June 16th, I think it is, in 2 weeks. So the public hearing is now open. Tim, do we have any comments for the public hearing? Or
I don't have comments, but just for the record, in the citizen comment portion, there were elements of budget discussions in those 3 comments that I would just say we would include in the record on that. That was from Joseph E. Bycroft and Eric Cron. So I already read those. I'm not going to reread those, but there were elements of that included the budget that we would just put forth as part of the record.
Yeah, I think we should include those as part of the public hearing as well, I think.
Yes.
Good suggestion. Thank you.
Mayor, I have a quick comment. I could put my citizen hat on if we want.
Sure.
With regards to this budget, I have an apology to make. I promised myself when I got into office that I would never be a go-along to get along politician. And I did just that with this budget. I voted to pass a budget that I know is not as transparent as it could be. It's not as transparent as it should be. And next year, we as a council are going to go before the public and ask them for a tax increase.
We
And
are?
I would be remorseful. We've talked about it, and I know that our budget will probably require it. I would be remorseful if I didn't bring up this issue of having a fully transparent budget. I've taken a lot of abuse for continuing to raise this issue. I thought I could buy myself some peace by letting it slide this year, but it has only emboldened my bully, and I made a mistake in being quiet. So I would like to request that we strive for higher levels of transparency in every department of our budget and our governance.
Okay, well, thank you for that comment. The only thing I would add to that comment is that it's definitely not my intent to do a property tax increase next year. Obviously, there's a lot of information that has to take place between now and then. I think it's way premature to assume automatically that's going to happen. I think there's other options as well, but everything will be on the table. But I appreciate Councilmember Bruce's comments. I think we've made efforts to be as transparent as as was requested. That's why Scott, I know, did the comparables as requested, and hopefully we can keep working to be more and more transparent. That's a worthy goal. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever.
I think it's all comes down to a matter of allocation and how we attribute where the dollars are going. But I think that there's a higher level of transparency that we could obtain.
I expect that we've had this discussion via email as far as the transparency and the appropriateness of how funds are allocated. I think we've done an excellent job on our budgets. We continue to do so. We are nationally recognized as having done so. And so I guess my only suggestion there is you asked this year to have a city by city comparison, and honestly, I think Scott did an amazing job pulling that up. Again, with the experts in the field telling us that we have been doing an excellent job, I guess my suggestion would then been the next year is to come up with some very specific matters to do that we can discuss. But I think we've come to a consensus that we have liked the way the budget is prepared. I certainly do. I appreciate Tim and Scott's efforts on it, and I would commend them for a job well done.
I think in all fairness, there's certain departments like Public Works and Police that could be outsourced. And so when we have something that we choose to have in-house that could potentially be outsourced, and we allocate funds towards that department, but we call it IT, or we call it HR, or we call it debt services, it's not as transparent as it could be if we were allocating those to those particular departments. I know you're happy with it, Scott, and that's fine, and that's great. And I know Scott Jurgis is doing a fantastic job with our numbers, but I want extreme transparency.
Well, again, as a council, we're each elected to represent our position. Outsourcing is appropriate in certain situations. I do not think it's appropriate in these two situations. But again, we've created a process, and that process was creating a budget committee and a benefits and compensation committee, and those were times to really put forth those concerns. But at this point in time, I think it's noted that Councilor Bruce would like to see more of that going forward. And philosophically, I can't disagree with transparency. Saying outsourcing guarantees transparency, I'm not sure that's always the case either. But again, respect those opinions. And
I'm not saying it guarantees transparency by outsourcing, but I'm saying you could look at the cost of outsourcing and compare it to the cost of in-house, and that would be a legitimate apples to apples comparison. And I recognize the majority would make this option no matter the cost. The majority of the council would make this choice no matter the cost, but the public has a right to know what that actual cost is.
I disagree with that.
I've been bullied into silence, and it hasn't paid off for me, so I'm going to speak up.
I take exception to that. I don't think that, I think, Tally, if we could list things down and you would like to have us look at the transparency on that, I think that we can do that. But I take exception to what you just said.
Well, you weren't here last year in our 2019 budget discussion, and Scott Jurgis did a more accurate accounting for all of the costs that's going into our policing, and it's closer to the 8 million mark. And then this year we dialed it back by allocating numbers to other departments, and I feel like it's kind of deceptive. And I, as a resident, I want to know actually where my dollars are being spent.
Mayor, may I say something?
absolutely.
I'm always wanting to promote transparency, but I will say that the information provided last year was not as in-depth as what we've done this year.
It would probably be higher if it were.
In addition to that, I just want to reiterate that especially as we've gone through issues of COVID, earthquakes, floods, and other elements here, it's reiterated to me the importance of the great work of our staff, and having them here in this city has been invaluable at those times, especially when we have the control to be able to address issues related to an earthquake and inspections and issues related to our public safety. And so I'm always going to promote where our staff are and the great services that they provide. And I want to reiterate that at this time.
I would agree with you, Tim. It's fantastic, and we have tremendous staff throughout the city. And we have a wonderful, tight-knit community, and things are flowing beautifully here. And I think we can be super, super honest about it. And the fact that I've been bullied and abused and harassed from the get-go for wanting to have this conversation has culminated to this moment. I'm not going to stop talking about it.
No, we understand that. And like any organization, sometimes people agree to disagree, but do it respectfully and professionally. And so I respect your position. I think we put the system together that's allowed every council member the opportunity to express their position on the budget committees and as we put together the 10-day budget. And we'll continue to do that going forward. And you, Councilor Bruce, you have every right to continue to express those concerns. When I look at the budget over the last few years in some of those areas you've mentioned, I think it's become much more transparent, and it's been more clear. And with Tim and Scott, I think we've made great progress, and I don't think you ever stop trying to improve on something. Once you stop improving on it, then you stop progressing. So
I'd like to give quick kudos to Scott Jurgis and to Tim T. I feel like our staffing levels have escalated to a new level, and I have tremendous confidence in their skill set and their leadership, and I really feel like our city is moving in the best direction.
Okay, well, I get confused. 1 minute you're telling us that we're not doing it right. Next minute you tell us we're doing it right.
We're moving in the right direction, but
Okay.
I understand, Tim, they feel a little justified in the way they're allocating things because the majority of the council would prefer that's the way things are allocated. I'm a lone wolf in wanting a higher level of allocation transparency.
Okay.
But I have tremendous confidence in our budget director's skill set and our city manager as a leader. And I feel like staffing wise, we have great leadership.
Okay, well, that's important. All right, thank you, everyone. Any final comments in the public hearing? Hearing none, we will close the public hearing and move to the action items in our agenda. The first item is 4.1, which is a resolution 2020-22 approving entry into a vehicle repurchase option agreement that we've talked about. Scott, do you want to introduce that, or Tim?
Yes. So thank you, Mayor. This is a new rendition of the lease that we have typically had for our police vehicles. It is proposed that we purchase about, between the vehicles, the equipment, and everything that goes into the vehicles, about $1,945,000 of vehicles. Then we have the interest that goes on that. We pay for it over a 2-year period. And then at the end of that 2-year period, we have a guaranteed buyback from the dealer so that we're able to, and it's a very favorable buyback due to the fact that they have a good market for those vehicles at the end of that period. And therefore, our carrying costs of the vehicles over that time is relatively low. Again, like I said, it's about $945,000 in vehicles. We make about $67,000 of interest payments over that period, and then we sell the vehicles back at the end of that period for $1,382,000. Our net amount that we pay each year that we have to budget for is $315,000, and that will start a year from this July. So it's actually 2 budget years out from where we currently sit. The budget amount that we will have that we'll pay in July is about 417,000. So the net savings year over year in this is about $100,000, just slightly higher than that. And it's a combination of not having to equip our vehicles again, reusing a lot of the equipment that's on it, that are on the current years of vehicles, and then also favorable interest rates that are coming back and giving us a good financial deal with all that.
Thank you, Scott. Any comments or questions regarding Resolution 2020-22? Hearing none, I would call for a motion.
I move that we approve Resolution 2020-22 on the vehicle repurchase agreement.
It's been moved by Councilmember Bracken. Do I have a second?
I will second that I will second that.
Okay, and it's been seconded by Councilmember Peterson. Any further comments?
Yeah, just thank you. I know that we did a lot of homework to make sure that this was the most fiscally responsible route to go. And so thank you for that homework.
Agreed. Thank you. All right, I'll call for the vote. Councilmember Peterson,
Yes.
Councilmember Bracken,
Yes.
Councilmember Bruce,
Yes.
and we'll excuse Councilmember Michael, who's away on business, and I will vote yes. Next item is Resolution 2020-23, approving entry into a governmental lease purchase agreement with Zions Bank for lease of police vehicles. Scott, do you want to introduce that one as well?
Yeah, so again, the finance numbers don't change. The proposal is that we have just under $1,950,000 of vehicles that we'll purchase. The buyback amount on that would be $1,382,000. Each year, we end up absorbing $315,000 plus a little bit of payment that goes into that. We have very favorable interest rate. The interest rate on this is 1.86%. Which is very favorable. We were managed to lock in at a very good time from a financial market perspective, which reduces our cost of finance. And so, yeah, just very good.
Thank you. I know we talked about this again in our work session. Any final comments or questions from the council?
When have we started taking delivery, and when will the final delivery take place, Chief?
If you recall, we were a little late in getting the order out on the cars because there's a lot of discussion on it. And COVID hit, GM had a strike. There were so many moving parts on this one, so we're late on the cars. There are some on the ground now, but they're building some of the rest of the trucks. It might be August before we get all the cars instead of July. That's just one of those deals we can't do anything about. But
Will it negatively impact our current cars?
I'm sorry.
It's not going to negatively impact the lease we have on the current cars that need to be turned back.
No, we have an agreement with them. They understand. We're going to go over on mileage, and we understand they'll get us the car as soon as possible. It's just a set of circumstances that nobody had any control over. And so we'll work together. We always do.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
So just to clarify, every one of these vehicles will be able to use the Tier 3 fuel, which is an 80% reduction in emission.
That's my understanding.
Yes. When we were looking at the cars, Councilman Bracken told me how important he felt that was to us. So we were going to change stations, but then Chevron said they were developing the same fuel. And we chose vehicles that specifically took these fuels. I think there's 1 or 2 diesels in the mix as well. But by the way, they also have the non-idling provision in the cars, or option in the cars. So when they're stopped, they go into a battery mode.
I think that's a big plus.
We may just have the cleanest burning police fleet in the state. I don't know that for a fact, but having virtually all of our vehicles Tier 3 ready and on idling mode, I think is a significant win. On that note, considering this is kind of a joint with the previous resolution, I'd move that we approve resolution 2020-23, entering in that lease agreement.
I'll second that.
Thank you. It's moved by Councilor Bracken and seconded by Councilor Bruce. Any further comments? We should note that the next time we go around that we are going to, and everyone's agreed to look at an electric vehicle, maybe for code enforcement. So that could be exciting if things fall into place. All right, I'll call for the vote. Councilor Bruce,
Yes.
Councilor Bracken,
Yes.
Councilor Peterson,
Yes.
and I will vote yes. Next item is Resolution 2020-24, approving the park and ride maintenance interlocal agreement with UTA, Salt Lake County, and others for $6,500. This is the mouth of Big Cottonwood Canyon. Tim, you want to introduce that?
Yes, these are two existing park and ride lots. One that they term in the agreement as the Big Cottonwood Canyon lot. The other one they title as Hillsboro. They are two lots that have existed that we haven't contributed to. The county has come to us along with other partners on contributions where these are located in our city. They are requesting that we fund a portion of this. The other funding agencies include Salt Lake County, UDOT, UTA, Solitude, Brighton, Snowbird, and Alta. And they're requesting that we're part of this. As you mentioned, Mayor, this agreement goes from 2020 to 2024. The yearly amount would be $6,500. There has been a modification that, at least in the first year, 2020, due to COVID and some of the economic impacts, that the four resort entities not pay this year, and then they continue their payment starting next year. And so that's part of a separate agreement that's occurring, but we're recommending approval of this. We feel it's an important partnership that we participate in, and it serves an important benefit for our area.
Any questions, comments from the council? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion for approval.
Move that we approve resolution 2020-24.
It's been moved by Councilmember Bruce. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
It's been seconded by Councilmember Peterson. Any last comments or questions?
Quick question. Do we know at the bike repair shop what the maintenance on that will be? Do we have those numbers?
The bicycle repair.
Sorry.
I don't have the numbers right here off the top of my head. It's minimal each year, and I could get that for you, but I don't have it right now.
But I think I do remember the report when that was being put in. That was question asked then. I understand, as Tim just said, it's very, very minimal.
I just want to get a chance to get up and see what it looks like. I think it'd be good to try it out.
Okay, I'll call for the vote. Councilmember Bracken,
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson,
Yes.
Councilmember Bruce,
Yes.
and I will vote yes. Next item is Resolution 2020-25, accepting a request for indemnification. Shane, would you introduce that for us, please?
Yes. The Governmental Immunity Act of Utah provides that when officers or employees of a Utah governmental entity are named in a lawsuit. Once service of process is completed, which means filing of the complaint and service of summons on that employee, the employee then has the right to request defense and indemnity from the governmental entity to the extent that the lawsuit involves actions taken by the officer employee within the course or scope of the officer's responsibilities. And so in this case, a lawsuit has been filed. Councilmember Bruce and the city have been named as defendants. Councilmember Bruce, within 10 days after service of process was completed, filed a written request with the city for defense and indemnity, as is her right under the Immunity Act. And so now what is happening is the city's governing body, the city council, has to respond to that request within 10 days after it is made. I just want to make it clear for purposes of the governmental employees, officers and employees Ethics Act, that in some ways granting this resolution would benefit Councilmember Bruce. But again, this sort of benefit is exactly what is intended by the Immunity Act. So I just want to make sure that that is clear to the public for Councilmember Bruce's benefit. She does not, since that disclosure has been made, she is entitled to vote on this resolution as she normally would if it didn't involve her. She does not have to recuse herself on this. So anyway, if there are questions, I can try to answer them. But as I have said, my recommendation is for the council to approve this resolution. I think that it's appropriate under the Immunity Act.
Just correct me if I'm wrong, Shane. It is not uncommon for a mayor, employees, officers, other people who work for the city to be named in those suits. We've approved these regularly over the
Yes.
years. My point is that there was some things that I'd read recently that somehow this was an unusual step, but I do remember having done this many times in the past, and so long as our employees have been acting well, or the mayor or whoever it may be that's named is acting within the scope of their duties, they are entitled to that defense.
That's accurate. In the city's 16 plus years of existence, we have done this many times. Councilmember Bracken is correct that usually when a lawsuit is filed against the city, the plaintiff goes on to name individual officers and employees of the city besides just the city. So this is not an unusual situation, and this is not an unusual step for the city council to take.
Thank you, Shane. Thank you, Scott. That's good background. Any other comments or questions regarding Resolution 2020-25? I know we've all been briefed as to the detail when you read the whereases and the specifics in the resolution. So if there's no further comments or questions, I would entertain a motion.
I move we accept the request for Resolution 2020-25.
It's been moved by Councilmember Peterson. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been seconded by Councilmember Bruce. Any further questions, comments? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Councilmember Peterson.
Yes.
Councilmember Bracken.
Sorry about that. Yes.
Councilmember Bruce.
Yes.
And I will vote yes. Thank you, everyone. The last item of business is item 4.5, Resolution 2020-26. It's approving, ratifying a bid and awarding a construction contract for citywide slurry seal, which is a major piece of our 5-year plan of road maintenance. Matt, you want to introduce that?
Yeah, just real briefly, Mayor, this is, like you just mentioned, part of our the second year of our 5-year rotating maintenance plan. This is for this fiscal year, 2019-2020. We just got about a month and a half, 2 months late on bidding it based on the COVID crisis that we're in. But we're moving forward with that now. We went out for public bid and received 4 bids on this. Asphalt Preservation was the apparent low bidder, and we are moving forward with that. And before you is the contract to approve that. It's for about 3.5+ million square feet of road preservation in different areas in the city.
And Matt, I can assume too that I think it was implied that we, in our current budget going forward, that we were not doing capital items, but I think the same type of thing will be happening in next fiscal year as well.
Correct.
Yeah. Scott,
The map for that, is that something we're going to post to the website quickly or soon so people, there was the one comment, it makes sense. It would be nice to see where that work's going to be happening.
Okay, the map, I asked that that get posted. I'm not sure if it's been up yet, but also just FYI, part of the contract of this is what we've done last year as well. There will be a week or so before the work begins. There'll be door hangers on the actual affected homes where that will be up, and then we'll also post the routes on the website so people know to avoid those areas. This project does go fairly quickly when we have cooperation, so we do our best to make sure we don't have traffic in the area.
Hey, Matt, will you reach out on all the different social media platforms to try and get word out as much as possible on those roads?
I think Tim Berry should be doing that. Yeah, Tim Berry should do that. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, Tim will take care of that for us. As soon as this gets taken care of, we will start posting as soon as we have a schedule and where we're going.
If I remember correctly too, I think it's of interest that if you look at the 5-year plan, every year, almost every district has some level of road repair and improvements. Is that right, Matt?
That's correct. I mean, yes, that is correct.
Yeah. So I think it affects all the council districts. So thank you. Any further comments, questions, suggestions?
That procedure is only puts a road down for what, a couple hours? Is that what it is?
It'll shut down for about 24 hours. It goes quickly. Once they're in, they get in and get out fairly quickly, but it's the cure time with that. We've done last year, like I said, it went really well. We got a lot of notifications out to everybody, and I think the public was very cooperative. So we try to keep them off for at least 24 hours. But you can realistically get in under a little less time, but we don't like to open it up that soon.
Okay, thank you. Any final comments, questions on Resolution 2020-26?
No, from the work session, I believe, Matt, you said that the bids came in about $150,000 less. So that's a significant savings on the current year. Being under expend going in on this budget, that's definitely a positive.
Yeah, correct.
I'm glad we have this plan in place and I'm in favor of doing it. So I will move to approve Resolution 2020-26. Is that correct? Ratifying the bid for the asphalt preservation.
Second that.
It's been moved by Councilmember Bracken. It's been seconded by Councilmember Bruce. Any final comments, questions? Hearing none, I would call for the vote. Councilmember Bracken.
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson.
Yes.
Councilmember Bruce.
Yes.
And I will vote yes. Okay, that's our action items other than our consent calendar. We have City Council work session minutes of May 5th, 2020. I entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
I move that we approve the minutes.
It's been moved by Councilmember Bruce. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
It's been seconded by Councilor Peterson. All in favor can say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that was unanimous. We do not have a closed session. So again, I just want to thank each of you.
Mayor,
Please.
I apologize. We need also to approve the minutes for May 19th.
It's not on the agenda.
It's not, it's on mine.
Oh, I might have the old one. Okay,
They were on the consent calendar. Does that motion still work, Shane, or do we need another one?
I specifically said May 5th, so.
Yeah. If you could do another one, I would really appreciate it.
All right, May
Sorry.
5th and May 19th.
I move
Yes.
that we approve the May 19th minutes.
It's been moved by Councilman Bruce and seconded by
Second.
Councilmember Bracken. All in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed, it's unanimous. So Paula, it is passed. And again, what I was saying was thank you, each of you. These are hard times, difficult times. I appreciate the decorum and the manner and how you've communicated through these tough times. So
Mayor, may I ask one question?
Absolutely.
In light of the, just curious if we had discussed or if we, a plan to when we may go back to live meetings in the council chamber with the public attending. Is that something that's on scheduled for 2
Good.
weeks, or are we looking out further? Have you, I'm assuming you or Tim has thought about it at least.
Good question. We actually had a quick comment today, and I'll let Tim, and we don't have a formal time set, but there's indication from what the county is saying. It looks like it will be July, but it'll be based partly on the information we receive from the county. Tim?
I would reiterate that, yeah, we are not anticipating doing that in 2 weeks. We'll look at July, but we're going to take it on a week-by-week basis to see where the county's at and where we're at with all of the numbers, and then we'll determine that.
I'm just looking up to when I have to walk across the street and be there rather than, sit here. So
Yeah.
thank you.
So I would plan on the next meeting being like this, but then hopefully July, we're back to some normalcy with respect to meetings, yeah. Riley Pilgrim, any comments on the fire before we leave?
No, kind of the same situation as we began. They're just doing an overhaul and rehab, right, or overhaul and final extinguishment of everything. So reports I'm getting was like I shared earlier, stop to the outside of the home and a little bit of roof damage.
Do we know if there are no injuries? I'm hopeful.
Doesn't look like it, and I'm not sure they were at the home at the time, but yeah, no injuries that I'm aware of.
It's always a traumatic thing when there's a house fire of any type. So yeah, best of wishes to the residents. Hopefully that they're okay and they can recover soon.
Absolutely.
All right, again, thank you, everyone. If there are no other comments, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Not 8 o'clock, so I don't know how to do that yet. Sorry, go ahead.
I move that we adjourn.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilman Bruce. Do we have someone who wants to do a second?
I'll do a second to apologize for over talking what was important.
Yeah. All right, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor can say aye.
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 All right, we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Good night.